Hi guys, you're in the right place if you want to learn how to sketch by understanding what you're looking at rather than breaking things down into shapes. So today what we're going to do is work on this blue-gray Tanager, and a big thank you to Rodri Ford for use of your reference photo. You need your scrap piece of paper and a pen that actually what I'd like you to get if you can find one is a pen that doesn't really leave a lot of ink, because we're going to be primarily doing a lot of these small pen marks like this to develop the whole bird. So if you're organized, that's great. You can see that the bottom of the bill is pretty much the lowest part of the bird, and we don't really go over too far this way. So where you start on your paper, just make sure that you've got space to go up for the tail, and and uh, uh, you know, enough for the width. So let's just start actually at the tip of the bill, and I just want you to do these small marks that are light, and I want us to do our shading as we go. So at the end of the bill, there is some variation in the coloring. I think I don't know what the bill is made of. It's almost like bone, isn't it? And I just want you to do very light strokes with your pen. And once we get going and get a little bit into the sketch, and I calm down, I'll be able to explain a little bit more why we're doing this approach today, which is a little bit different from what we've done in the past. Now, this is like the bridge of his nose right here, and there's a slight angle upward. Don't make it too steep. And this is the bridge of his nose, okay? So do a short line. Now this is his forehead, so we're just going to take this up a little bit. Oh, I didn't want the pen dropping that a dark color like that. Oh well. And then the curvature around the eye and the top of the head. And I want you to stop there. Let's go down and do a couple under his chin. And we're just paying attention to the dark areas in the picture. Let's cross the bill. A few shadow lines going up to the front of his face. I'm doing this little dark part and then up around the eye. And then we can actually work on putting in the eyeball. Just take your time. This is going to be a long sketch. And for the eye, it's not a perfect circle. And we do have the inner lens that's black. which is what a lot of birds have, this great big black pupil. But you don't, you know, it really depends on the angle of the light, whether or not you see the black pupil or not. And what we'll do is just leave that little bit of light there and just shade the rest of the eyeball a little tiny bit, because we want to make sure that we've got some fairly good you know, contrast and stuff, but because the bird is such a light shade, so we want to use light markings with our pen. And let's just go along the top of his head a little bit. Oh God, I'm already worried that this is going to be too big. Okay, let's go back down here and just slow down. Do the dark, a little bit of shading under his bill. We've got these chin feathers. It's the shadow around these chin feathers that we're using our pen to capture. Today we're focusing entirely on the little shadows so do the shading of his cheek feathers. And I want, actually just check the placement of the eye right now, because see how there's not much distance, I mean, between his eyeball and the opening of his bill. I want to bring those a little bit closer together. I do that just by changing the size of the eyeball that I've drawn. Adding a little bit more. Now you know that we're going to be coming back and doing our corrections and adjustments and stuff, but if we can just try to get down enough little pen marks. Now let's carry this our markings along here. We've got a slight dip for his throat. See how this is kind of, this is like almost like his jaw, and then his throat, and then it curves down into his chest, but I don't want to do all of that at once. Let's just do our shading. We're going to pay attention to where we are. This is under his throat. And see this shadow line along here? That's because these cheek feathers are kind of sticking up a little bit. They're not lying flat, and the feathers underneath are at a different level. So there's a little bit of shading and shadow in here. So just like pay attention to where you are and add those shadows that are showing the different layers of feathers. And then there's more to the throat. And then there's another difference in the way these feathers are laying. Get into his neck. And of course there's shading. This is part of his body's in shadow. We're sort of going down. Did I tell you guys to start small? Well, look how big mine is already. I had to put them in the dryer to shrink them. And we're just going to go along. Don't get too concerned about this curve here just yet, from his chest to the top of his tummy, like rib cage and stuff like that. I just want to get down this shading where these feathers are sort of changing angles into the curvature of his body. But we're not going to commit to any of these curves just yet. Now let's go back to the top of his head. It's a very, very little bit of shading, very hard to see. And we've got the back of his head here. And then the back of his neck. I feel like this is too wide. We've got the back of his neck, and we curve up here. Now, where do we want to go next? Let's just put in this little bit of shading here where we've got the top of his back. Those feathers are kind of bumping into these feathers at the bottom of his neck. It's super hard to see, but see, this band of feathers here is at the base of his neck, and they're bumping into the curve of his back, so there's a little bit of shading where they are like meshing together. And it's these little shadow points that we are doing in our sketch. Okay, let's see, we've got, this is his shoulder here, so we can start adding a little bit of extra pressure on our pen, not a lot, and we're just going to start picking up these richer blues at the top of his shoulder where the wing starts. And once we have our different markings in, we'll be able to go back with our pen and actually define the darker blues and the purples and stuff, but I don't want to do that just yet. I want to get the wing in. So we'll just carefully, okay, if I don't want to get too screwed up, this is the darker blue here. And what I'm doing is I'm following this, and I want to get these color variations in here and just slowly work this section up. Just take my time. We're getting in some of the features with the markings, and then it's lighter into the back. But this feather right here is actually probably the other, where the other wing is folded across. But what I want to do is not get too far ahead of myself, and I just want to get in some different tones with my pen. Oh, come on. I choose a pen that doesn't drop much ink, and then it decides to drop no ink. Okay. See, we're just take his tummy out. But let's just pay attention to his shoulder. And some of these darker feathers in the wing. This is a grease mark on my paper. So I'm having to add a lot of pressure just to get the ink to work. That's okay. So these are the, oh, that's ridiculous if I can't get it, leave any marks there at all. And if you're at a section where, like, you know the feather is a blue or whatever, and you want to just shade it all in, that's fine. As long as you know, like, where you are on your sketch, that's the main thing. Now, once we just get down some of these wing feathers, we can see if we need to kind of change the width of the body. Or if he kind of looks, you know, not too bad the way we've done him. It's not like I'm trying to draw the border of every feather, but it's more about trying to get my brain to stay oriented where I am in the picture. So I'm sort of like wanting to practice that higher degree of concentration. I'm thinking it would be a heck of a lot easier to read a science book. Okay, I don't want to get into like, oh my god, look how big he is, you guys, come on. And I'm gonna, like, his tail's gonna be up here where my scribble is. Ugh. Okay. But now I want to get in the tummy. Let's just do the shading where, okay, and don't blow it by getting like super, excited about making some concrete progress. We're going to keep our little strokes small, and we're going to go through the curve. And look, I want you to pay attention to the distance between this feather here and the bottom of his tummy, his shoulder here, and how far out we go here. So just try to keep yourself oriented so that you know like where you are in your picture. And I think once we pass the curve of the tummy and start going back toward the legs, it's gonna be better. Okay, it's a big crease mark on the paper right there. It's not letting me leave any ink. Now, how about if you like the width that you've got here from his back down to, now that's not the bottom of his tummy, okay? That's forward of his leg. So for me, I want to make this a little bit wider, but if you like this width, what I want you to do is go back and work on his the rest of the feathers on his back. Because you're sort of like committing, right, to the angle and stuff. Oh, I better pay attention to what I'm doing here. Now this, for me, this feather here is where I stopped here. So if you're happy with that, or if it's too buggered up for you to fix, just blend in, just add some feathers. You can sort of, you know what to do. We just want to add the rest of his wing here. And that's charcoal, so if you're doing a section that's charcoal or tinges of black, shade it in so that you're kind of like oriented. And see this little band of charcoal right here? This is all part of these little feathers here that are lying on the tail. So we can just put that band in. I think these feathers of mine should have been a little bit longer. And then we've got the edges, those feathers, but good. You know that expression, do as I say, not as I do? That's what this channel's all about. Because look, I've totally buggered up my spacing. My pen was causing problems, so I did these marks at the top, and now they're part of his tail. Keep these tail feathers a little bit narrow, okay, you guys? It's not, there's a couple of things going on. It's the angle, because it's kind of like a side view of the tail. You can tell it's not flared. Probably not this long either. And the underneath tail feathers are tinged with the charcoal underneath. So just put in some of those tips and darken them, and then those feathers are coming in and lying underneath the top tail feathers. And take this little border down into his body. So this section here for me is not something that I'm pleased with. Now let's do his bum feathers and see how they're kind of like, they start a little bit below this one. I think my crappy printer, I keep cleaning the heads on it, but it doesn't make any difference. That's why we have these lines through this beautiful reference photo. Just shade his bum feathers just a little bit because they're still pale. And then see, this is like his elbow joint. And this is the feathers under these, so that's actually in shadow and behind. So that's what that darker section is there. It really sucks that I've got this great big grease spot right here on my paper because I can't leave any markings at all. Unless I try switching to a different pen. I'll do that in a bit. And then this dark line here is actually shadow cast by his leg onto his body. Well, let's get his foot in there. Watch your angle. Oh, jeepers creepers. Man. Oh, look, this. I'm gonna leave big crappy marks all over, but that's all right. see if it actually leaves some markings. It's dropping so much ink, I gotta clean the end of it. No more dicking around. Let's take his foot out. And then we've got the, don't make it too wide, okay, because you can always make it wider if it ends up being completely too narrow. So we've got a little bit of his back toe right there, but see how wide the joint is? So I just want you to make sure that you've got some depth to his foot. And take this. This is the shadow and the curvature around his middle toe. The middle toe is the longest one, so it is going down and curved right around the branch, the nail at the back. This is his other toe that's kind of coming out. And then the nail itself is going back. And then this toe, we've got the third toe here. Comes out to the knuckle. And then we'll do the bottom. It's a little bit of shading. It's almost like what we want to do is like shade in the branch to show the bottom of this toe with all the different bumps along the pad. And then the claw that's actually white. But we'll just do the little shading underneath it if we can. And then let's just get the branch back here. And use that to sort of like define what's going on. With the claws and stuff. Now don't worry about committing to the width and size of the branch and all that kind of stuff. We're going to do that later, okay? And now that I've got this pen that drops a lot of ink, I'm going to have to be even more careful because I don't want to have them too colored. But this shadow here that's cast by his foot, there's body feathers behind that. So I don't want you to have this shadow as the border of his body because it isn't. He'd look too skinny then. Oh, I took his leg back too far. Well, that was unfortunate. We've got his tummy. We've got some a little bit of like shading where we've got the feathers sort of sticking up and not flat on his body. It's creating these little pockets of shade and stuff. That's okay with my darker pen. I'm gonna have to go back all over them anyway. Okay, so now what I want you to do is have a look at his chest line, and I want you to finish that off. Okay, so look at the size of the head that you've drawn, and we've got his you come off his throat, you go into the top of the chest, the rib cage and stuff, and then we're going to curve a little bit down into his tummy, and then we've got the flat part of his tummy with the curve, and then back into his foot. We could just add a few more darker patches to his chest. Now, how about let's get in his second foot. And see. But what I want you to do first, before we do his foot, I want you to be happy with his width here. Okay? And if you are, I'm just making him like a little bit wider. Thank goodness for this leaf, eh? Let's just put in his, do the best you can, just kind of coming off the curve. Keep it narrow. And then this right here, this is this toe coming forward and hooking onto the branch, and his other toes are going to be down here, and then his back toe is around. So this toe is coming out of the page toward us. So we've got the height of the toe, we've got a little bit of the joint, it's coming forward. The curvature of it. And then we're just beginning to see the width of the joint of his foot. So when we put in the border for the leaf, we'll just bring the foot down to that border. Forget the notch in the leaf. And then we can just run our, oh, you know what? If I don't have any grease marks on the paper here, I can go back to my other pen. Now let's go to work. And I'm just going to start doing like the detail work and the shading and make them look more like the way I want them to look. So to start with, you're probably thinking, why the heck did I want to do this sketch with just little tiny marks and not sketch them out the way we've done our birds in the past. So here's the thing. I thought that this guy would be great. I saw this sketch and I thought, wow, this would be a really fantastic tutorial in angles. And that was really the objective that I wanted to do for this sketch. Jesus, jumping Jehoshaphat, you have no idea how hard it is for me not to say a bad word right now. So what I wanted to do was focus on angles and the curve of the body and that swoop around his, you know, his tummy and his neck and everything. I thought that'd be so great. So I thought, okay, let me just sketch this guy out to see how it goes. And it was a disaster. It's very, very, very tricky for me to do. And so I thought, well, geez, that sucks. I mean, this is like a heck of a lot harder than I thought. I mean, I knew it was going to be tough, but so that didn't work at all. Oh man, you know what? I really wish. Why did I bring this shading down so close? I've completely lost his little elbow here. So then I thought, okay, well, let me just try again to see if I can get these angles. Can't be that bad. And once again, super, super tough. So this, we could have tried just sketching this and sketching that. Maybe you could have got it, but I wasn't able to do it. Too much movement, lines too big, too much real estate to cover. Oh man, you guys, super duper buggered all this up right here, simply because I had a grease spot on my paper and the pen wasn't cooperating. Excuses, excuses. So that's why I wanted to focus on doing the very small marks on the page to get the correct details down first, and then we can take it from there. So what I'm doing now is just adding some contrast, picking out some of the darker shades. I want to go back over my sketch and this is when you can, if you want it, if you need to make his wing a little thicker. Oh, here's the trouble part on the page. Let's see if this heavier pen. means business. So yeah, I mean, this idea of just having a tutorial on angles that I thought would be so great was just extremely challenging for me. So I thought, okay, how about we just work through the photo and see what happens that way. And it was sort of like a way that did make it a little bit easier for myself. Well, we've got different tones of blue, and we've got the charcoal. And the grays and stuff. And then this purple patch on the shoulder. So just work them over. Just put in a little bit of different tones. Where we went kind of light and cautious at the beginning, just to sort of focus on getting the shape down. Now that we're sort of like a little better oriented, keep this pressure nice and light so that we end up having some different, some good contrast and stuff like that. And then when we get back to the face, the head, and the neck, we can just darken these initial patches that we put in. And if your pen is okay, then you can just sort of like add a bit more shading to the curve of his tummy. We just don't want to make it all kind of like the same color. And then we can just, I'd like you to go back and just define these areas where his cheek feathers are sticking out a little bit and his throat feathers are sticking out a little bit, and we just have a little bit more contrast there around his face. And just stick to the same areas. Darken them up a little bit so that when we go back with a light shading, we still have our different tones. Let's do shadow under his throat. I think I'm done with that pen over there. Okay, now for my sketch, I've got his head too wide. Let's do some very light toning around the bill. Across the bridge of his nose. Slightly darker around his eye. And a lot of birds will have like an eye ring. We just want to have some definition around that, and the feathers that are a little bit darker passing from the eye onto the back of the head. And keep this nice and light around his, the side of his head and the top and stuff like that, so that it kind of shows where the light is reflecting off the feathers. We do have different patches under his tummy that are dark. Darker. Should we do something to our leaf so that it looks like a leaf? There we go. That looks like a leaf. Can you tell I'm a watercolor artist too? Just while you're messing around with the leaf or the branch or his tummy, I just want you to have a better look at your sketch and see where you can just add. I'm nervous about that blotchy pen. See, I'm not kidding when I say that we use whatever we've got, right? Including paper with grease marks on it. Okay, I don't want to use this blotchy pen on the bird because look, it's really bleeding heavily. It's hemorrhaging. Okay, so let's do the charcoal and the grays. We're gonna do the some of the shadows where we've got shade under the wing, just a smidge here, showing the curvature. Oh yeah, see? Oh geez, I should have done that in my leaf. Anyway, that was dumb. Come on. Now his tummy, is he nice and curved? We've got some loose feathers here. I want you to check the curvature of the tummy, see if you like that. See if his chest needs to come down a little bit more here. See if you need to change this angle. And if you add to his body, make sure you blend it in with some shading. I do kind of like that, but just, and see, this is, make sure you have this little curvature here, because this shows where his chest and his rib cage is starting. Off his throat. I'm too thick here. And the bill, is the bill large enough? Or does it need to be a smidge bigger? It's kind of a heavy bill. Got a little, just some ridges around here. Now we can just make sure you're happy with the definition around his eye and the shading of his cheek feathers, where the bill goes into the face. With the eye, if it's too big, how about you just kind of maybe do a little bit more shading around it. I'm a little bit stuck because I feel like I've done his forehead and the top of his head too high there. And then I want you to check this angle here from the back of his head, into the curve of the top of his back. And even if it means changing what you've done with the wing, I'd like you to fix that angle if it needs fixing. This guy is a tricky guy to do. And if you can just try to get some of the angles in, then that's perfect. Just wanna I always tend to like take a line and then just keep going with it, and that's not absolutely, that's not the way it goes, right? Now for his shoulder, I just want to, in my own sketch, see how I feel like I've got the shoulder too high, even though there is a fair amount of distance between his shoulder and like the front of his chest. I feel like with my sketch it's a bit too much. So what you can do, have a look at yours, and if you need to pull that down a little bit, like for sure things are going to be buggered up, okay? Like, you know, his wing feathers and the different shading and stuff like that, but positioning some of this stuff, we should be able to correct these larger features just so that the placement looks good. I don't know. Instead of good, I'm sort of going for like less crappy. I promise the next guy is not going to be nearly as agonizing as this one. I can assure you. But maybe what you could do on your own, if you like, is what I said about just trying to do the swoop in these curves, and you will see that it is flippin' tricky. At least I found it extremely difficult. Pay attention to, okay, see, these are the ends of the wing. So it's kind of like in sections. These feathers lie, and then there's a little bump, and there's a bump. So I just want you to have a look at what you've done with your sketch, and it's okay if you've got to curve that out a little bit. I won't tell. And I've screwed up all the coloring as well on these, but if we can just bring in a few. All this stuff right here is so confusing for my brain to follow. All I want to do is draw a bunch of lines straight. This, and all these are too short. I've got them too short on my sketch. Okay. Are you semi-happy with what you've done? To me, it's a win when we spend time together. I like all the little bumps on their pads. Well, I think he can't be any different from this. I don't know if that's good, if that's a grease patch there too. Okay, you guys. How come nobody emails me their picture? Please, it can't be much different from what I do. We're all self-taught, you know. struggling along. So anyway, I would love to see whatever you want to show me if you're up for it. And I think before I totally screw this guy up anymore, I should say goodbye. How come I've got this great big dark patch and there's not even a hint of that in the reference photo? I'm going to blend that out a little bit. Trying to show the curvature of his neck into his back. I know it's there, but just with the lighting and the way the lighting is in the photograph, that's not showing it. Okay. Well, thank you for subscribing. Oh my God, I'm so excited when I got over 1,000 subscribers, man. I was like super, super thrilled. So thanks, that's all you guys. Okay, my leaf with a great big snail on it. Thank you as always for your company. I really, I don't know, it just means so much to me because I think about what I want to do with you guys, right? And then I like find these photos and then I get permission from the amazing photographers who allow me to use their work. And then I get to hang out with you guys, and art is a journey, and then you can hopefully see your own development along with mine, right? Anyway, happy snappy. So thank you so much for spending time with me today. And like, no joke, this guy is complicated. So if you want something like a little bit easier, always look at my earlier videos because things are progressive, right? So hopefully in a forward direction. Anyway, have a fab day. I'll see you next time.